This is Tech Pathways Unlocked, the podcast that delves deep into the journeys of some of the industry's top leaders. We speak with innovators, pioneers and visionaries to uncover the stories behind their success, the challenges they've overcome and the passions that drive them on. Whether you're an aspiring tech leader or a seasoned professional, our goal is to inspire and empower you with insights and advice from those who have navigated the complex landscape of technology to reach the very top. This podcast is proudly brought to you by Stopford Recruitment, where your growth is our commitment. Tune in and let's unlock your pathway to success. Today, I am delighted to be joined by Matthew Pendlebury, the Head of Engineering at OpenOrigins. Matty, welcome to the podcast. Great to have you on.
Hey, thanks, Ollie. It's good to be here. So, what can I tell you? How can I help?
I'd love to start this by asking you to give a little intro to yourself. You know, who is Matty? What is OpenOrigins? And a brief summary of how you got here to where you are now.
Oh, wow. Okay, right. This may take a little while. So, I'm a head of engineering. I suppose it's probably the most generic title that I can actually give myself. I work for a startup, OpenOrigins, and we are a small company. So head of engineering covers a multitude of sins, disciplines, whatever it might be, all manner of bits and pieces. So it's very general. I do software engineering things. It's probably the best way to describe it, and also a bit of team management stuff as well. So the bigger and longer sort of picture is that I've been a professional in the business process for nearly 30 years now. So graduated in 96 from Manchester Metropolitan University. And then I have worked in, let me try and name check all of these, computer games industry, offshore life assurance, development consultancy, that's the right sort of term for the company, automation in preclinical drug discovery, large format digital printers, hardware security module development, security consultancy, and internal security for such. And now a little bit of this, which is a bit of all manner of things dealing with provenance in digital media, trying to combat the joys that we have of disinformation and deepfake.
Fantastic.
Does that give you
Absolutely.
Enough to go on?
More than I was expecting. Thank
All
you
right.
for that. So just going back to, back in 1996, and, graduating Manchester Met. Mm-hmm. Nice to see a local link to myself as well.
Well, with a surname like Pendlebury, I can't escape really, can I? So.
What would you say has changed from where you was aiming to be back then to where you are now? Fresh grad to an experienced professional, with still a lot to give.
Yeah. So let me wind that back even further. I'll take you back through that history of mine. I'm going to try and give you some of my motivations at various times for making certain choices. So
yeah,
I'm a kid of the 80s, Sinclair Spectrum, 1983, and that's sort of where I started. Oh, fantastic. I can play games on this home micro and all the rest of it. Oh, I can learn to program. That's kind of great. Then I ran out of maths because I couldn't figure out what radians were when I was trying to do one of the examples in the book. That's another anecdote. But yeah, kind of got into that. But programming is quite exciting. Sixth form, I was doing that. I managed to do some work experience with a friend's parent company called Microbel. And they taught me C, which is the first sort of serious programming language that I kind of really picked up there. And duck to water and all the rest of it. So I really enjoyed this. Wasn't the most, as a kid, I was quite a shy kid, didn't do the sports sort of thing and all the rest of it. Do now, but that's another story. But I kind of very, very kind of, I suppose introverted may be the wrong word, but very into kind of computers. It was something that I understood and I could do a lot of, and I was quite interested in it. And that really helps in studying it. So through sort of the sort of sixth form, I need to go to university. What can I go and study? And I thought, things that I enjoy, maybe, I don't know. The world was open to me at that point, but I just couldn't make a choice. And it was like, do you know what? I kind of like computers. I've seen Max Headroom, the TV series. I'll have you. And I thought, I want to be Bryce Lynch. might sound ridiculous to you, and you probably have to go and look that one up. But it's like, yeah, Bryce is an odd role model, but there you go. And I thought, okay, I can go to university. I can go study this stuff for real, and it was pretty cool because computer science was not a thing at school at that sort of time. You had a few BBC micros, and that was kind of it. It just wasn't on the agenda because it was kind of too new. So went to university, and I started off with electronic engineering and computer science. I dropped the electronic engineering after a while. I enjoy electronics, but a bit too much maths and a bit too hardcore, and actually two fairly hardcore subjects in one go didn't make sense. So did computing. As I went through that, I did a sandwich course, and my third of 4 years was a placement, and I went to CCTA, the Government Centre for Information Systems. It used to be called the Central Computer and Telecommunication Agency, and they used to own all the computers in government, all three of them, back in 1950, 60, whenever it was. But they no longer did that, but they provided advice for government. Anyway, I ended up being their technology researcher, and oh boy, did I fall on my feet there! Absolutely fell on my feet. So it was, had a wonderful boss. Had loads of things to look at, to go and play with, go and look, say, how has this got an application for government? So I was going and talking to all the kind of big vendors, Silicon Graphics, who are really big into VR. Yes, the first time that VR was big in the early 90s, and all these things here. I was, had a transputer on my desk, the core of pinnacle of British supercomputing industry from the 80s that didn't really go anywhere. But there were loads of different things, and I got involved in lots of bits and pieces, for everything from publishing kind of reports. So I wrote my first web pages for CCTA back in 1995. Before things like tables and things existed, and before CSS and all of these sorts of terms that modern developers would know. So did a lot of things there, and I thought, there's a lot here. I kind of enjoyed that, sort of looking at lots of different technology and seeing where the world was. So finished off the degree, and I thought, well, do I stay in academia? Do I do a master's or maybe even a PhD? I was asked, and I thought, no, I can't do any more of this. I will go absolutely nuts.
Why is that?
I don't know. It was just sort of so when I was at university, I found that because I was really into the subject, I kind of knew more in some areas than some of the lecturers did, because it was fairly clear that they'd worked in industry and then they'd ended up in academia, and then they sort of said, I'm going to tell you how it was when I knew everything that was going on. But that was now like 5 years ago, and you go, hang on a sec, I know that information is no longer really current. We've moved beyond that sort of stuff, and I can accept that is what's on the syllabus, and that's what I have to write down, regurgitate for my exams and so on, but that just didn't feel quite right. And I thought, okay, I'm kind of ahead of this here. And it was interesting, actually, just looking around and going, there were clearly kind of people on that course that some people really got it. I was building computers and selling them to make some money as a student. When that was kind of a cool thing to do, I suppose. And that was, there were people like me who were doing this and were really into it, and there were other people who kind of going, I don't know, how do I start Windows? How do I run Word? And you're thinking, you're in your third year of a computer science course, and you've no idea. Okay. There's some of us are hopefully going to end up with a degree, and some of us are hopefully going to end up, or probably going to end up in McDonald's or wherever it might be. Yeah. So it was, I suppose, kind of like that was sort of, I don't want to be sort of trapped by the past of academia and kind of be held back by it. I want to go off and do something. So I got this kind of business. I ended up with a degree, and I thought, thank goodness for that. That's good. What am I going to do with this? And I had a friend at university, a chap called Ben, and he was absolutely passionate. I'm going to go into computer games, and indeed, he went off to go and get a job with Psygnosis in Liverpool. And I thought, okay, didn't really think about it, and then I kind of got the degree, and then I was sort of back with my parents, going, I should really go out and get a job here. And then what do I do? And I could go and work for some big company and be polishing databases for a living. That's not very interesting. And lots of things I couldn't find. So I thought, do you know what? Ben had something there. The arguments he made were quite good, which is, it's all using kind of like the latest techniques and technologies. You're absolutely pushing the limits of everything. Do you know what? Yeah, why not? So I applied for a load of jobs. After having here you'll like this one. So I decided I never wanted to go back to Manchester because it was a bit grim, and being mugged and these things were not very exciting. Living in Longsight wasn't great, but I thought, so I ended up interviewing for a company in in Manchester, and they did what at the time was a classic computer games interview, which was they actually lots of really detailed questions about, in this case, C programming, and you're kind of thinking, oh my word, it's you're trying to really kind of like, it's like, okay, it's really quite anal sort of stuff. And then once you finished asking all the questions about that to prove that you're worth talking to, they'll then give you a really hardcore interview about computer graphics. Oh, yeah, okay, so I've done a brief course on computer graphics, but I didn't know a great deal about it, and graphics pipelines and vectors, matrices, viewing frustrums. It was like, oh my word, okay, this is all quite hardcore. And I kind of regurgitated as much as I could possibly remember and thought, well, do you know what, that was a really interesting experience, but clearly I need to know an awful lot more about this. So got through that interview, and on the way out of there I stopped off at the university bookshop and bought 2 whopping great big thick tomes on computer graphics and thought I better read these then, hadn't I? They're all going to be like this. Anyway, I went off, had a few more interviews, but I ultimately ended up getting that job there, a company called Vertec, later General Simulations Incorporated, and we ended up doing running a flight sim, which was quite interesting. It was Microsoft Flight Sim at the time. It looks pretty good nowadays. In 1997, it didn't look very good at all. It was like the landscape's completely flat. If you had a hill, it looked like a pyramid. It was a bit like that, but there were some very, very deep aviation nerds who would like build their own cockpits, and they absolutely, loved flying the airliner from, London to New York or whatever it is, and then handing it over to somebody else to fly it back in real time. There's a community out there. There's still a community out there that love doing this stuff. But it's like, okay, but we thought, oh, we've got computer graphics because we're making some other games, flying F-16s and blowing things up in morally ambiguous stuff in Africa, I think it was. So F-16 Aggressor was a title, but it had a really good graphics engine. We could do some of that. And we sort of put a lot of that in. That was interesting. That was interesting and exciting. And there's lots of stuff going on. Fortunately, the company went bust, as many games companies do. And you're going, I really, really want this to succeed, but I haven't been paid for quite a few number of weeks now, and now I can't even afford to put petrol in the car to get to work, kind of. So that was getting a bit off. And I genuinely had to leave that. So I got a job in offshore life assurance. Phoned a job agent up, said, I speak C. What have you got? And then they said, how do you fancy the Isle of Man? And I said, that's in the Irish Sea, isn't it? Yeah, that's the one. Just checking. And I got a job with Clerical Medical, worked with them for a little while. But that was a big company then. That was a very, very different environment. And I don't know, it was kind of, I was sort of in a team of PC developers. I think there were 8 of us. I was the only developer on the thing that I was doing, which was, it's called an illustration system. So a broker who's trying to sell one of these products would need to draw, put some numbers in front of people. I'm going to invest £500,000 in so-and-so fund or whatever it is. And they need to draw graphs and show this and then print it out. And then somebody would sign it at the end. It's kind of legal sort of thing. But technologically, they were backward. This was 1999. They were still using Windows 3.1. On my desk in front of me, I had a 486. I mean, these may be kind of irrelevant details, but they were a bit behind. And it all kind of came to it. The IT department was taken over by an accountant, or the financial director called Nigel, who gave the immortal line of, if it wasn't for this year 2000 problem, we wouldn't be buying all these new computers. At which point you kind of knew that it wasn't going to. I mean, his other classic line was, this internet thing, it's not going to catch on. So I quoted directly, at which point I was pretty darn sure I was leaving anyway, but I knew I was going at that point. So there was a guy who'd started contracting with me at the time, and he said, I'm just doing a little bit of work here. I've come back to the Isle of Man. I was born there. I'm going to be starting a company with some friends of mine. And I basically was like, give us a job. And eventually I did. I joined a company called Synapse, and we did it's a bit of everything, really. It's a bit of sort of IT support and installation stuff. It was kind of configuration, doing some development stuff, doing bits of security. Again, variety. Variety was interesting. Dealing with lots of people, things that I kind of quite enjoyed. So I did that for a while. Isle of Man started to drive me a little bit mad at the time. So if you've been there, I mean, it's 80,000 alcoholics. Sorry?
What was it like?
Isle of Man. So I mean, what is it? It's a rock in the Irish Sea. You could sort of say that. It's 30 miles long, 12 miles wide, lozenge shaped. So 8,000 people, it's a little bit hard to get to. You either fly on or off, or you catch the ferry from either Heysham, Liverpool, or Belfast, I think. So getting on and off to go and do something is kind of hard. Not a lot of culture kind of comes there. And if you want to go and do something, you suddenly realize you're paying a couple of £100 to get a flight to go and see something. And then you've ended up in an airport, and then you need to go and hire a car in order to get somewhere. They need a hotel. And you go, hang on a sec, I just wanted to go and see this gig, and it's now cost me half a month's wages or something. So a little bit sort of frustrating like that. And you also realize that it's quite an insular community. I mean, it's big enough to be huge, but you kind of go, I start to recognize most of the people on the high street and in the main settlement there, and you think, well, and because I wasn't brought up there, you don't have the relationship that they sort of have. And they kind of go, oh yeah, I knew your brother's teachers, sisters, pets, so and so. It's like, okay, they've all got this kind of connection, and I just hadn't. And I remember also here's another random anecdote for you. Going out, asking somebody where, I can't remember where some sort of shop was. And they said, oh, only been here a few months. How do we get to the so-and-so? And they say, oh, right, well, it's down here, turn right, and then you turn left, past the chip shop that burnt down. And your brain's kind of going, chip shop that burnt down? When's that then? When was that then? Oh, it was about 10 years ago. And you're going, I've been
Does that mean nothing much goes on then? Oh, God.
So I never did find out where the chip shop that burnt down was, but it was, it's a community. You either kind of embrace it wholesale or not. And I kind of figured that I've met all the interesting people here, and I don't think there's anything more for me. So I needed a change. I went traveling for a while. Yeah. So
just going back to your time at university, I don't want to dwell too much on this point, but your time at university, you had the opportunity to go back into academia, but you chose not to. Yeah. And obviously, then you mentioned that getting that interview at the gaming company, and you felt like you had to need to brush up on some skill sets and read 2 thick books.
Yeah.
Is that you saying that, when you are interviewing people nowadays, do you sort of have that same perspective that perhaps you don't learn everything from education and academia, and maybe perhaps things can be self-taught to a level that is still acceptable to be hired for?
Absolutely. So if I'm interviewing, I'm not interested in, you sort of say, here is a question, give somebody kind of a collaborative programming exercise or something. And I usually work with them through that. And I'm looking for lots of things in this. It's not a case of, can you answer this absolutely perfectly? In which case you've probably cheated with ChatGPT in another window or something like that. But it's like, actually, do you, and the question that I love using, it's kind of old now, but it's interestingly formulated because it's deliberately ambiguous. So you have to think about it, and you have to process it a couple of times to go back through it. So the reason that I do that is, I say, I don't care whether somebody can regurgitate, a programming interview, regurgitate code perfectly. They get all the semicolons in the right place and all the rest of it. If somebody makes a typo, nobody cares. Programming environments will just deal with that sort of stuff nowadays. That's just absolutely not a problem. I'm more interested in figuring out, can you think through the problem? And if you get stuck, are you prepared to admit it and ask me for a bit of help? In which case, we'll work on it together, because you'll probably know stuff that I don't. I'll know stuff that you don't. I know all about this problem because I've done it 1,000 times. But it's like, actually, I'm interested in that. Can somebody be self-starting enough to be able to get on and actually do something? And some of it, the other thing that I think is really crucial is that, can I get on with this person? Can I work with this person? The interview is 2 ways round. It's not a case of, you're going to be in front of this sort of panel of people that need to answer 50 questions. And if you get any of them wrong, the trapdoor in the floor is going to open into the shark pit or something. It's actually not like that. I always see it the other way around, saying, actually, these people they're interviewing me in a particular style, and they're asking me these things. Could I work with them? Or are they going to be, or are they sort of like blank faces that are going to be miserable, in the same sort of office space? It's not that at all. Can we get on with one another? To be able to have a sense of humor, can you actually have a kind of a polite, sort of business friendly bit of banter about something or not? And do I have confidence that this person can figure it out? And sometimes, it's interesting. It's a change. Kind of reflects some of the things that you sort of touched on before, which was what's changed about me. And when I was in my 20s or so, very, very, very in the head, very much, everything was logical. It was like, this is the way that everything must work. Very intellectual. And I find sort of now, in my early 50s, I'm very much more intuition. Somebody walks into a situation, size them up super quickly, which is quite interesting. And it's that sort of intuitive, it's that hairs on the back of your neck thing sometimes. And it's like, actually, will I get on with this person or not? And you go, yeah, you're probably all right, but you're going to be a pain in the proverbials to work with. I don't want that. No, you don't. It won't work for you, and it won't work for me. So that's important. I mean,
the approach that you take is quite refreshing, because dealing with and overseeing processes day in, day out, you do get a mixed bag of processes, especially at the technical stage. And for example, live coding exercises isn't for everyone, but I think the approach that
they're horrid. They are.
Yeah,
and I recognise that. I do.
Exactly. And recognizing that is great, but also the approach that you take separate to that is not necessarily bothered what is, to a certain degree, what is being coded.
Yeah.
But we want to work out whether we can work with that person with the communication that is being had, during that sort of interview. And I think that is something that, can really set the tone for how and what it is like to work within said business. Which I suppose, moving on to OpenOrigins, doing some really exciting things at the moment, and growing fairly quickly, partnering with some interesting companies. Startup life, all hands on deck. Something that comes up a lot when I'm helping startups and scale-ups attract the talent is the competition they face against the big tech firms, and the firms that have these all singing, all dancing bonus structures and benefits packages. And you work for our brand, and it's the brand that you work for, not necessarily the actual role itself, the contributions. What would you say? And this is probably a bit of advice for people that are maybe getting their first job or looking to move from a big tech to a startup, or vice versa. What would you say are the key differences from medium to large companies that you've been at to, for example, OpenOrigins now?
Okay. So bigger companies have a degree of stability. It's kind of some of the obvious things. Big, you're likely to have a career, maybe not a career for life nowadays, but you're likely to be there potentially for the long term. So if you dare I say, you toe the company line, you do all right, and the rest of it, and keep your head down, maybe be all right. I mean, although companies do end up having these kind of occasional kind of contractions where they'll, kind of make layoffs, but broadly, a lot more stability and a lot more probably job security in the bigger organizations. That also kind of leads to, they've probably also got more established products. So they're also kind of going, well, we're already selling, X million, whatever, widgets into China or whatever it is. We're just going to keep on doing that. We're going to make a slightly shinier widget with a slightly more polished facet, or whatever the hell it is. So they're kind of they're iterating on their existing sort of product lines and existing things. They've already found their thing. They've got a lot of that kind of going on. So they found their niche, and they're probably kind of, in a sense, turning the handle on it a little bit. They're interested in then sort of optimizing quality for what it is they do, and engineering effort for that. Contrast that with a startup, and you're generally saying, actually, we're trying to find this. It's called product market fit, is the term that gets bandied around a lot, but trying to figure out exactly what it is we're going to make, what it looks like, and all the rest of it. And you're also trying to move quickly, because you go, we think there's a gap in the market, there's something new, there's something exciting here. We have to be there to be the people that people want to do this with. We need to get big enough to be able to do it. So we have to go there. And that means that to get to that place, you sometimes need to sacrifice things like quality to a point. So you're not engineering with the same sort of rigor that you would be at a large organization. You're working faster, so you're playing a little bit faster and looser. So yes, you are taking more risk. We don't want it to go wrong, obviously, but we need to make sure that it is just good enough. it's kind of the space rocket thing, isn't it? It needs to be good enough to get to orbit, but you don't want any excess mass on it, otherwise it's going to slow it down.
Yeah.
So it's that kind of idea. So you're kind of making things just good enough. The other thing is, in larger companies, you tend to have a lot more structure around sort of teams and roles and things. You'll typically be bigger, so you'll typically be in a bigger team. There'll be more scrum masters, managers, teams around doing lots of various bits and pieces. Where in a startup, it'll be a case of, oh, we need to do some whatever it is. Okay, I know how to use that. Give it here. I'll give it a go. As I was trying to do bits of HR when we started at OpenOrigins. Not really my thing, but I'll do the best that I can in order to do those sorts of things. So there's just bits of everything. So you need that kind of flexibility to be able to get on and do things. There's probably less certainty with regards to things like planning as well. You kind of get blown around by the winds a little bit more. So it's like, there's a big demo coming up, right? All hands on deck. We need to absolutely kind of crank this out, whatever it is. Whereas bigger organization, you're probably saying, oh yes, we're releasing version 23.7 on this date here. And if it slips by a week, then, a project manager is going to get shouted at, but nobody really bats an eyelid for the most part. So there's that sort of difference as well. So I suppose it's that sort of stability versus sort of edginess in some respects. I think you get a bigger opportunity to take risks and do newer and more interesting things. It's like, hey guys, I found an interesting thing. Let me see if I can make this work as a quick tech demo. Hey, do we like this? Let's see if we can push it a bit further then. Let's see if we can actually put some engineering into it now. So there's an element of that you can do inside a startup. There's a lot harder to do in a more traditional, larger business as well.
Yeah. And I suppose not trying to make this a sales call as to why you should join OpenOrigins, but for example here, if I was a candidate that is interested in OpenOrigins, wanting to join the business, what can OpenOrigins promise that individual? If I was at either I was at a sort of medium to big tech company in a custody position, or I had some concerns over joining a startup, what can OpenOrigins not necessarily promise, but what could you offer an individual that perhaps other companies can't?
So I would say because the organization is small, you get a much better opportunity to really make a difference. If everybody's not pulling their weight, then it's just not working. So it absolutely is a case of you can kind of see your own fingerprints on the finished product, rather than going, yes, I was one of 200 engineers that put out version 23.7 or whatever the hell it was. Yeah. So there's an element of kind of like that. And also, we're dealing with problems that I think are very real. We're trying, if you're being able to kind of say, actually, can we help prevent disinformation in this modern world? Are there solutions for this? You're actually kind of, for me, you're doing a kind of something good for the world in a sense. So being able to kind of push that mission into your work, I find a lot easier because it's more direct. Whereas, if you're in a big, you're a team of 100 people doing kind of the same thing, it somehow feels diluted. So being able to kind of, I suppose, kind of pull together to be able to achieve a thing in a smaller environment, that is an opportunity. And also moving quickly as well. We strip away as much process as we possibly can. And that is, it's a two-edged thing. You processes in place so that you actually engineer things well. It does slow you down a little bit. So you try and strip a lot of it away, but it does mean that when you do make a mistake, the cost is a bit higher. So yes, Absolutely. You can work a little bit fast and dirty, but actually it's, we're trying to, again, optimize to get the right sort of balance there to make it work. So it suits some people, it just doesn't suit other people. People need to be proactive, need to be able to get on and do stuff. If you're somebody that needs to be told what to do, then I don't have time to keep telling you what to do. I want somebody that's going to go, oh, I've got a fair idea what's going on here. Right, throw me at that. I can do a bit of that. Then we'll sync in, 4 hours and see where we've gotten to. That's what we need, that sort of proactivity and sort of self-starting nature.
Yeah, love that. Which moves us on to artificial intelligence, or as some people know it, AI? Because apparently the tech industry needed a new buzzword to obsess over after blockchain took a short breather. Obviously,
Well,
you're dealing with blockchain, so
we
it's not a
do
breather
both
for
of these.
yourself.
We can, yeah, we get all the brownie points. So yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So, what is AI cooking next?
Oh, that's an interesting question. So I think I'm going to step back a little bit with this. So AI seems to have it's kind of hit the world in the last, I don't know, year and a half, 2 years, or whatever it is. It's kind of it's become big. It's
Quickly evolved.
Stop with no. I'm going to be careful with that. So I don't think it has
No?
quickly evolved. I think it has slowly and reasonably evolved over time. But it's only just reached the sort of tipping point of actually being useful. So back at university, I was writing neural networks and things. I had tens of nodes in some of my neural networks, and I actually make it do slightly useful things in an academic sense. Nowadays, the neural networks that are used inside the big models, I don't know how many there are, billions of nodes, probably colossal numbers, bigger than I've got fingers to count. Anyway, so it's what's happened is it's just we've had this capability that has improved as computing power has improved manyfold over that time. So what's actually happened is we've actually got a large amount of research that's been done over probably 30 plus years into these things that's now starting to become useful in a way that people can easily interact with. So it's not as if it's suddenly just kind of been dropped from orbit and gone bang, here we are, here is the magic oracle that can tell you all the answers. Actually, that's been happening for a little while. Yes, it's reached a tipping point. So that is a thing. What will that mean? Where will it go? So I mean, there are some obvious things you can say, which is everything's going to get refined a little bit. So we're going, things like your chat models are going to become less prone to hallucinations and telling lies. Effectively, they're going to be better at that. You'll be able to communicate with them in more interactive ways. That's going to be better. We're presumably going to see an awful lot more and better voice agents in various things, call centers, etc. will be, and they won't be awful. They'll be all right. They won't be brilliant, but they'll be all right.
Which, just to add, by the way, your perception on voice agents and AI being used for processes such as, in this case, from my point of view, recruitment and helping candidates find new roles, helping clients find new candidates, other sort of industries where you need to support and help customers. Do you think AI can help bring that personable touch and allow that relationship to still be built just as good or better than face-to-face, video call to video call interaction like this is?
Definitely
will
not
it
yet.
beat the personal touch?
I don't think it will. Not for a fair while. I mean, interesting. I think we can draw on basically science fiction. I think in a few years' time, it might be 5 years or so, we will get people who are kind of in some sort of weird relationship with an AI persona on something. And it's just a whole world of it's a bit odd, and I don't think we've got the words to describe it yet. Whether it's healthy or not, I suspect not, but I think that's going to become a thing. I think we're starting. I'm trying to think where I can't think of life. No, can't remember what the company is, but there are people who are trying to train models based on people who have passed away. So you can still interact with your dearly departed, Auntie Ethel or whatever it might be. Which is again a bit odd. They're taking kind of recordings from whether it be voicemail messages or whatever, trying to train it to maybe images and things. And again, there's a whole world. I keep using this word odd. It's like I don't know how to deal with this yet. I don't think society knows how to deal with it yet either. But I think that's something that's going to become a bigger thing. I think we're already got to the point of going. We've accepted that AI is going to, is hitting things. Yeah. There are some big debates over use of creative material, music or literature or artwork, etc., to train these things. And at the moment, I mean, it's almost too late in some respect, because right now there is a wild west out there. There are some countries that have no legislation. Most of them have minimal minimal legislation that's effective. So it's the kind of the great data grab time. So anything that's been put out on the internet is likely training OpenAI's next model, and Google's and Facebook's and all the rest of them. So there's a sort of a bit of a change about it. So they're trying to grab all of this material, and even if kind of like governments finally catch up, go, oh, no, we can't do that. We need to protect small musicians and or artists, whatever it is. They've already lost that in a sense. So they'll be able to develop models based on the trainings that they've already done in earlier models. So it upsets me in some respects because it is disrespecting people that have put a lot of time into creative activities. But I think the battle is pretty much lost for media that's already been published in that way. There'll be some big legal battles about music. Is it sampling a bit of Led Zeppelin or not? And then I don't know, EMI and Warner or whatever go to battle, or whoever it is over it. But there's going to be that sort of stuff happening. Who owns the copyright and things?
Which what AI can do with certain objects, as in imagery and content, is something that you are aiming to help overcome at OpenOrigins, which I think is is interesting. And that sort of satisfaction that you will get from being involved in that area, I feel is massive, because I've never known blockchain to do something like this before. I've obviously placed professionals within blockchain firms, and I've never known blockchain to work with this sort of area. But I think it's interesting, and the stuff that OpenOrigins is doing is clearly out to make a difference and already making a difference, which I think is which is super. So moving on, Matty, to something that I actually found when looking into your profile a bit further, was the fact that you recently did a Hyrox, raising donations for Macmillan Cancer Support, something very close to yourself. That takes a lot of guts, because looking at the photo, which I'll make sure it gets brought up if you're happy for it on the podcast, it looks tough. But I suppose there's one thing doing that. Obviously, there's a reason for that. There's obviously a motivation behind it to obviously make sure that you can raise awareness for such a vital charity and important charity. Bringing that back into your sort of mindset now and previous, does that prepare you? Are you prepared with resilience and stuff? Does that something you have to bring into work life?
It's an interesting one. I mean, so from my perspective, actually, it's only been the last few years, 3 years or so, that I've actually been pushing myself to that sort of level. I was a classic computer nerd, sit behind a computer and skinny kid, didn't exercise at all, didn't get on with it. But actually, I had a minor sort of health scare, and it was like, go and get my cholesterol's high, go and get yourself sorted out. It responds well to diet and exercise, so I eat less cheese now, which makes me very sad. And I thought, I need to go and kind of basically get myself sort of stronger and fitter. And I joined a gym kind of across the road, and they sort of figure out what the dangerous end of a barbell was, and which is something I just never encountered before in life. And I thought, okay, I can feel myself getting stronger and fitter. I'm losing body fat, and it's like I'm getting to better shape. This is great. I need a hard challenge now, because that's kind of how I work. It's like, what am I looking for here? And I think I picked up in a podcast or something. Somebody says, some of the hardest challenges that most people undergo are things like called Spartan race and obstacle course racing. Think of an assault course, but spread out over either 5, 10 or 21 kilometers. And I thought, that sounds pretty hardcore. But do you know what? That's what I'm going to aim at. So I aimed at that, and it would only have been about 8 months after I started training, and I did a 5K Spartan at Pippingford in 22. I have to think about this now. And I was like absolutely stoked. It was like, this is something that's like, I've achieved something that actually pretty tough. I think it was pretty tough to do that. One of the people I was going around with from the gym, she managed to break her shoulder in there, dislocated her shoulder. It's like, oh, right, okay. And it took about a year to fix. It's like, okay, this is actually quite serious stuff in some respects. Anyway, the next year I thought, do you know what? I capitalize on this and push this a bit harder. And so I am getting to a point with this. I know I do ramble a bit. Next year I thought I'm going to do this thing called trifecta, do the 5K, the 10K, and the 21K in a single year. 21K, of course, being a half marathon distance, and they get the bigger and bigger obstacles out for this sort of stuff. So I did the 5K, did the 10K. I did a half marathon as well. I was trying to learn how to run at the same time, figuring really I'm going to need how to learn that. Did a half. And then I had an interesting incident, which is I did a park run of all things. I got my best time ever. I was really happy with that. And I was going, my ankle really hurts. It's a bit sore. What about I've twisted it or something? How annoying! I kind of hobbled home on it. I thought, well, I've got this 21K Spartan coming up. The Spartan Beast, as they call it, because it's all about making things sound tough. And I thought, and it was just that kind of, do I do this or do I not do this? The sensible part of me say, actually, no, I should really kind of just rest and all the rest of it. And I thought, the other part of me said, no, I'll bind it up, take some paracetamol, and grit my teeth and do the best that I can. And indeed, I went off and I did a Spartan Beast in 23, complete the trifecta. It took me 5 hours, but I got around it, and it was indeed blooming tough. And because I was hobbling around on it, my thighs were cramping and all the rest of it, so it was pretty tough. I was a bit of a mess at the end of it. But I got it, and the medal that I got from the end of that, I'm really proud of it. And I found out later that I actually had a stress fracture, so I actually had a broken ankle when I did it, which is kind of why I was hobbling around it. But the thing that kind of brings me back to that and other things I've done, such as the high rocks, are I recognise now that at my age, I'm also prepared to push myself a lot harder than I would have done if I was 20. I find that, it's like, yes, this blooming well hurts, but, it's kind of like gritting your teeth and just sort of, just recognizing that this will end, and you will get through it. All you need to do is put one foot in front of another and another 20,000 steps and you sorted. It's like, but actually every step takes you a bit closer. But that's sort of recognizing that, there is a hard thing here. Can I do this? Can you absolutely do this? And pushing that sort of through, and I think that's quite a valuable thing. And I'll bring that into my mindset now. And they go, oh, it's a hard challenge. I'm not enjoying this, but we need to get this done. Every increment is a little bit closer to this. There's that, and I think I've actually met a lot of people who sort of perform in that in a leadership role or in a senior sort of management, who do kind of like fairly hardcore sports. So saying triathlon is the thing that keeps coming up. Sometimes it's you get a lot of runners as well at the top level. It's interesting. You kind of go to any kind of business meeting and just like see who else has got a Garmin on, and you kind of go, oh yeah, what's your sport then? Yeah,
it's resilience, and it's something that creeps into every single line of work. And yeah, you're right. That will live with you now and enter everything you do, because that you've done something challenging. The end was there. You just had to work a bit harder to get to it, and then you feel great for doing it. So yeah, I mean that's amazing. I'm quoting what you've put after the high rocks on a LinkedIn conversation. So I did it. That was tough, proper tough, almost like. So proud of yourself, but thinking, shit, why did I do that?
So I've got a t-shirt that I got from a Spartan one that says on the back of it in big letters, it seemed like a good idea at the time, which I just love. So yeah, that's very much me. But
leads me on to the sort of final part of the podcast, which is something that I ask at this point is, if you take yourself out of where you are now and go back to the start of your career, when you've mentioned, you leave university and you don't want to go back into academia and you want to do this and do that. If there's one piece of advice that you can give yourself, what would it be?
I would say it's probably a bit of a follow your heart. In some respects, go find a thing that you find is interesting, dive into it, and then just seize opportunities along the way. Don't overplan your career. Unless you've been the kind of kid that, at 8 years old, you go, oh, I want to be a chartered accountant, and that's it. You're there and you're doing all of the exams and the rest of it. You're doing, unless that really is your sort of thing, in which case, follow your heart to be a chartered accountant. But actually, for the most part, go, do you know what? There's a thing that's kind of going on here, because, just go with it. As I say, I didn't, when I was at school, I didn't know where I wanted to go for degree or whatever it was. I didn't want to choose my A levels. I'm having a chat to a career person from some university, and they say, I don't know what I want to do. I've got all these subjects here, and they say I can do all of these at A level. And eventually spoke to somebody at University of Salford, I think it was, and they said, do you know what? If you want to do anything in the sciences, maths, physics, and chemistry won't go too wrong for you. That's what I did in the end. And it just kept so many things open for me, because I never wanted to kind of close that down. So yeah, it's, keep things open, see what opportunities present themselves, and then, when you get that opportunity, grab hold of it and go for it. That's the.
Has that conversation, that piece of advice that you got earlier on in your career, has that piece of advice resonated with you? Has it stuck with you for your career to date?
I think that is. Yeah, I mean, there've been a couple of times. I mean, I was sort of relating kind of a long-winded sort of story about my kind of career. So actually, when I kind of picked the games company, I think that was something, that was one of the opportunities there. Another similar idea was I worked for Encipher, later Thales, big company doing hardware security module stuff. And the company that we used to do our security assurance, basically test the things and make sure that they were secure so that these modules could do their things, was a small consultancy doing cybersecurity. It's kind of quite edgy back in 2012 and around that sort of time frame. And I was kind of thinking, 68,000 people with Thales, 100 people or whatever it was with MWR, all kind of edgy, weird hacker types. Do you know what? That sounds a downside more interesting than where I am at the moment. However, completely different set of skills. I can't, that's really hard to get there. But develop the relationship between them, and then there's an awful lot of me saying, I don't suppose you could kind of give me a job, could you? And that took about 18 months because they didn't know what to make of me. I didn't fit the mold for being that's a consultant. But again, pushed that. It was an opportunity that went there, and absolutely don't regret that. It was a fantastic opportunity to go off and do some amazing things with that organization as well. So when opportunity presents itself, evaluate it and see whether that's what you want to do. But don't spend forever planning it, because if I plan my career now, even from where I am now, there will be things going on in 15 years time that I can't even conceive of now. They haven't been invented yet, so how can I put those into my career roadmap? Whereas if you're 18 nowadays, who knows what's going to happen when you're 50 like me? Who knows?
Exactly. It's unknown territory, isn't it? But Matty, you've been amazing. Thank you so much for joining me. It's been an absolute pleasure. So Hey, Ollie here. Thanks for watching this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. If you want to get involved in an upcoming podcast, just simply get in touch. And please don't forget to like, subscribe and share within your networks.